What up, y'all? It's TYR, and today we're going to be talking about the concept of a Mega Baxcalibur in Pokemon Legends ZA. This is the Gen 9 pseudo legendary. I've been giving megas to some of the pseudos that didn't have megas so far, so we did Dragonite and then we did Dragapult. Now we're doing Baxcalibur, and I'm going to tell you the whole story of what Baxcalibur really is, and then we'll talk about how its Mega Evolution will go using that information. So first off, Baxcalibur, such a weird Pokemon. This design that it has, not that Pokemon can't look like other Pokemon, but because it looks so much like both TYR, Duraludon, I don't even think that's why this design looks weird. You see that smooth head? That's probably why this design looks weird. There's something about the smooth head, to me at least, that feels like it's just not the final form yet. If it had something like an ice crown, so pretty much the face of Baxcalibur that's made of ice, if that extended upward and had like a spiky crown at the top of its head, it would look like a final design, like he finished getting ready before he came out for this Pokemon game. That probably would have made its design look final. But either way, it's still a pretty cool Pokemon. And you gotta appreciate Gamefreak always doing something really weird when it comes to their designs, like Dragapult having Dreepy stuck in it. With Baxcalibur, it's that axe on its back. That's why it's called Baxcalibur, the back axe Excalibur ice Pokemon. Before we talk about him, let's start at the beginning, and then you'll see where I'm going with this Mega Evolution idea. So Baxcalibur, we start at the first form, Frigibax. Now Frigibax hasn't fully developed yet. The main feature it has is this dorsal fin at the back of its body that can absorb heat. It's kind of like a lightning rod, and what this fin does is when it absorbs heat, Frigibax is able to convert that into the opposite, into a very cool temperature. And so what Frigibax does is, it builds itself a nest and then acts like a refrigerator to keep its home very cooled, which is the kind of environments it likes. But that's the main feature, that weird fin it has that likes heat and is able to convert it, which is weird because it's an ice Pokemon, so it's actually weak to that fire typing, but this is how it's adapted in the wild. And this dorsal fin is what becomes the main feature of Arctibax as it fully develops. The Pokédex entry doesn't say this, but I think there's a limit to how much heat it can take. I think the more heat it takes, the more it can convert it into ice, but it still gets damaged by the heat. It can only take so much. So that's why when you use fire moves on Frigibax, it still does damage. The ability it has that reflects this fin is called Thermal Exchange, which makes it so that when it's hit with the fire move, its attack is raised. This attack is really supposed to represent it getting stronger ice powers, but it's not immune to the fire. But at the same time, it can't be burnt, because any burn it gets on its body, it'll just quickly absorb anyway. So while the inability to be burned does make it confusing, I don't think it's immune to the heat. It just tries to make the best of it when it's exposed to it. So that's Frigibax, the most annoying looking Pokemon ever. I can't believe this is the Dratini, the larger. All the first forms are so cute. So then we get to this Pokemon evolving, and this is when this Pokemon becomes a full-on badass. It evolves at level 45, so very late, and this is what happens to Frigibax. It's pretty much a full Baxcalibur at this point. And what this Pokemon is, why it's such a badass is, you see that fin that it's based its whole existence off? It does something with that fin. So first off, Arctibax coats its face with ice to protect it, something Frigibax didn't do properly. So now it has this layer of protection on its face, and it also develops that dorsal fin more and uses it as its main way of attacking. So what Arctibax does, it's trained itself, this is why it's a badass, to start doing front flips. So this is flipping forwards and slamming into the enemy with the back of its body, with that fin. And so it's pretty much an axe. It's weird, right? Gamefreak always does something weird. This is obviously not how animals would develop features in real life. They always add a weird vibe to these Pokemon. So yeah, it has the claws and all, but this is really the main way it attacks, by spinning and hitting you with its back axe. And so for this, it's developed much stronger legs. This is the main feature. It tries to practice again and again how to use its back axe more and more, along with it being a heat absorbing fin, right? So it's a pretty well-rounded Pokemon, and as the first Dragon Ice type, it's doing well since Kyurem with this unique typing. And this is when we get into the final pathway Arctibax uncovers. which is using its dorsal fin for like an all or nothing attack, which that's what its back axe is, right? Once it hits an enemy with that, the battle is over. So with this mindset, it trains this more and more until it ultimately evolves into Baxcalibur and then starts to use its back axe in a much more different way. So as you can see on Baxcalibur, dude is too big now. Don't ask me why Baxcalibur decided this is how it was gonna fight. Because it's so big, which it needs to be bulkier and survive in the wild, it's developed a reformed way to use this back axe, which is, one, its back legs are still strong. So what Baxcalibur has learned to do is jump up, do a front flip, and then the moment it's upside down in the air, it starts spewing all this cold air, fires it like a Kamehameha backwards. It's not aimed at the enemy, it's aimed backwards, and slams backwards into the enemy. So pretty much, it flips itself backwards, so it's kind of in the shape of an axe, and then just freaking floats towards the enemy. This is actually how the move is used, as absurd as it sounds, and I can prove it because I could show you an animation of it using this move. It's called Glaive Rush. It's a reference to this Godzilla moment here, where Godzilla does the same crap. Gamefreak's a big fan of it. They put that for Baxcalibur's signature move. And as weird as that move looks, you wanna know what it's called in Japanese? It's like the Great Sword Assault or something. The Giant Sword Assault. That's what the move is called. So here's the issue with this move. This move obviously uses a lot of Baxcalibur's strength up. It's a reformed way of how it was fighting more freely in its second form. It was just able to do a bunch of front flips. The front flip version that the second form did is not a Glaive Rush. It's just how it fights. Glaive Rush used on Baxcalibur is an all or nothing attack where it does a lot of damage, but it causes Baxcalibur to be in this less observant and attentive state on the following turn. The subtext to Glaive Rush is that on the turn after the move is used, moves bypass their accuracy check when they target it and deal double the damage. So if you hit Baxcalibur with even like a flamethrower on the turn after it uses Glaive Rush, it does double the damage. You can hit it with the Fire Blast because it'll never miss. This is the downside to Baxcalibur, and of course the point is nothing is supposed to survive the Glaive Rush. That's why you would use it in the first place. But if they survive, it's supposed to mark the end of Baxcalibur. It's not supposed to survive the attack after. Okay, so that sums up Baxcalibur. I don't want to get more into it than that. One, Baxcalibur can spew very cold air, kind of building on when it was refrigerating its home as its first form, but it can also use this to Kamehameha, flip itself backwards, and just float towards the enemy. That's what the animation looks like. It doesn't even have momentum to it. Dude just floats up to it. So here's my idea for now, a Mega Baxcalibur. There are two ideas I want to put forward. The first is to give Mega Baxcalibur a more reverted design that makes it look more like a dinosaur on all fours, but still with this giant spike on its back. This is how some dinosaurs are, right? They have a bunch of spikes along their back. You can either make a Mega Evolution where this dorsal fin splits into many, and they're like sails on a dinosaur's back. And by having Baxcalibur on all fours, you could tell the story of how it started off on all fours in ancient times, and then as it evolved over time, it turned into one and it stood upright. But its Mega Evolution would revert that. So it would revert back to a form where it's on all fours, has many dorsal fins, and there's two ways its ability could go here. It could either retain thermal exchange, the same way Ttar retains Sandstream when it Mega Evolves, because it still has those fins along its body. But the second ability I think it could get, which would be really incredible, and it's an ability that already exists, is Snow Warning. Now, this means it's giving up thermal exchange, and especially since I'm trying to predict this for a Legends EA game. In Legends Arceus, there's no hail. There's only the snow condition. So it makes Mega Baxcalibur a pretty perfect counterpart to Mega Ttar, where Mega Ttar whips up the Sandstream, which boosts its special defense. The second idea that would work for Baxcalibur is if... I don't know how to really word this, But if Gamefreak fully transformed this into a more goofy design, where you see how Mega Glalie kind of got corrupted and screwed up by its design, if its Mega Evolution focuses on this dorsal fin and how it wants to attack using it, Tunnel Visionly focuses on it, sacrificing stability in its body, you could have Baxcalibur Mega Evolving to where it's flipped upside down and just has the axe aimed at the enemy. Maybe its arms get buff and it's always like doing a handstand and its head is freaking flipped backwards looking at you. And so the way it attacks is it kind of looks like a scorpion, and it would just freaking drop down like a guillotine when it needs to. And that's how it would use Glaive Rush when it's Mega Evolved. It'd be a whole corrupted design. Or I suppose you could merge my two ideas together where it actually goes back on all fours, but the glaive comes out much further and takes a full axe shape to where it's standing on all fours, but the glaive comes out and over its head, and so it can just freaking chop you without having to look goofy. I suppose the last idea you could give, which I think would be less likely but fully possible, is when you Mega Evolve Baxcalibur, that dorsal fin, how its main focus is absorbing heat, that it just functions fully different. That all the ice on its face and across its body melts away, and it doesn't convert fire into ice anymore. It's just, for some reason, all that stored energy from fire, it exerts it in that exact state. And so Mega Baxcalibur would go from a Dragon Ice into Mega Evolving into Dragon Fire. And that is a really crazy third idea, where the thermal exchange now has a second meaning to it. You could swap thermal exchange into an ability where it's the exact same but for ice types. So ice moves boost its attack by 1, and it's also immune to being frozen now that it's no longer an ice type. I like this idea a lot just because I love when Mega Evolutions really have a change to them. Who knows what path Gamefreak would pick. You know, let me see if I can find any fan art for this. So here's a design where it is on all fours. It's also a lot more slim. So those ice scales on Baxcalibur's stomach normally, it now goes throughout its whole body. It has a more classic dragon look to it. And you can also see its tail has a little bit of that glaive as well. Because it looks so slim, if it could summon that snow warning and get a boost in its defense from the weather itself, that actually supports its design pretty well here. Shank that like button, y'all let me know your thoughts. How do you see a Mega Baxcalibur going in these games? Would you pick the dinosaur path I said or the dragon fire path I said, if you could? Or if you could try to predict how Gamefreak would think? Let's see. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.